Tonight's episode, we bring you three chilling ghost stories from our archives. A couple and their friend get lost in the woods, forced to choose between wandering the dark forest or taking refuge in an abandoned home they stumble upon. A mechanic working late discovers that the night shift can bring company he never asked for. And a woman, driven to the edge of madness, realizes she is being watched from outside her window, even though her apartment is 14 stories up. Now find your favorite spot and dim the lights. Nocturnal Echoes begins. Up next, a couple and their friend, lost among the pines, stumble upon a house that should have been empty. While this may seem like an amazing stroke of luck, some places hold on to memories that refuse to die. Faced with the dark forest or the shelter of an abandoned home, what would you do?
The map had promised a shortcut. Daniel had folded it in half a dozen times, tilting it in the waning daylight as if the creases themselves had betrayed them. His wife, Claire, leaned against a tree with her arms crossed while their friend Marcus stood nearby, tapping his boot against the dirt with a rhythm that betrayed both impatience and unease. The three of them had planned a quiet camping trip, 2 nights beneath the stars, a break from cell service, and a chance to laugh about how their younger selves might have gotten lost in the woods for fun. But the torn tent from the night before had killed some of the spirit, and now, sore, tired, and carrying gear strapped together with the duct tape, they needed shelter. That's when Claire spotted it. "There," she said, pointing through the trees. At first, Daniel thought it was another shadow, just the silhouette of trees clumped together. But as they walked closer, the straight lines of a roof appeared, and then windows. A house. It stood crooked in a small clearing, its paint long since peeled to gray. A porch sagged at one end, and weeds climbed the foundation as though trying to drag it back into the soil. Marcus let out a low whistle. "Looks abandoned, or condemned." "Better than sleeping in wet nylon again," Daniel muttered. No one argued. They climbed the porch steps carefully, avoiding the holes where planks had rotted away. The front door was unlocked, swinging inward with a reluctant groan when Daniel pressed against it. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and something faintly sour, like spoiled fruit. Their footsteps echoed in the hollow rooms. Stripped wallpaper peeled in strips, exposing a yellow plaster beneath. Still, the house had walls and a roof. That was enough. They unrolled their sleeping bags in what might once have been a sitting room. Marcus tossed his pack against a wall and muttered, "Creepiest Airbnb I've ever seen." Claire shot him a look, though she smiled faintly. "It's one night. We'll head back in the morning." Daniel agreed, but his eyes kept straying to the darkened doorways that led deeper into the house. Something about the silence pressed against him, thick and expectant. It was later, after they'd eaten granola bars in place of dinner, that Daniel first heard it. A soft sound carried faintly through the cracked windows. Humming. A woman's voice. He sat up, listening harder. It was gentle, almost tuneful, like someone passing the time while working. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Marcus sat upright immediately. "Yeah, I do." Claire frowned. "It's probably the wind." But Daniel shook his head. "No, that's a person." They followed the sound to the back door. The night air was cooler, carrying the smell of pine and damp earth. The humming was clearer now, drifting from the side of the house. Cautiously, they stepped around the corner. There, strung between 2 leaning posts, were sheets, about a dozen of them, swaying gently in the breeze, white in the dark, like pale figures caught in mid-movement. And in the middle, a shadow bent forward as if pinning another sheet to the line. The three froze. The shadow straightened, just the faintest suggestion of a woman. But when Daniel blinked, she was gone. Only the sheets remained. They stepped closer, hesitant. Daniel reached for one and pulled it toward him. The fabric, instead of being crisp and sun-bleached, was gray with grime, stiff with age. The edges tore in his hand. These are filthy," Claire whispered. But we saw. Marcus trailed off, his voice unsteady. They backed away, retreating inside the house. None of them wanted to be the first to speak of leaving. Not yet. Later, when the wind had picked up and the house creaked under its weight, they heard the second disturbance. This time it came from the kitchen. Voices. A man and a woman raised in anger. Their words overlapped, harsh and muffled through the walls, but the cadence was unmistakable, an argument escalating in fury. Claire clutched Daniel's arm. Someone's here. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and marched toward the sound. The others hurried after him, their own light sweeping over the warped floorboards. The kitchen door yawned open. Inside, nothing. The argument cut off like a switch had been flipped. The room was empty, just broken cabinets, a counter warped with water damage, and a rusted sink. Marcus swung his flashlight beam wildly. Where the hell did they go? No one's here, Daniel said, though his voice lacked conviction. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. They tried to sleep, but the house refused to let them. Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, when he noticed the faintest glow spreading along the hallway outside their chosen room. It was weak at first, like moonlight, then sharpened into something unmistakable, the warm yellow shine of an electric bulb. He sat up, heart pounding. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Claire stirred, then gasped. Marcus cursed under his breath. The glow brightened, shifting as though someone had flicked a switch in the hallway. But they'd walked this house from end to end. There were no working fixtures, no power lines running to the place at all. Daniel forced himself to rise. He stepped into the hall, the others behind him. The light winked out instantly. The hallway was swallowed in black. By then, their nerves were raw. They tried to rationalize. Tricks of the wind, tricks of their minds, exhaustion. But none of that held when the humming returned. It was closer this time, so close it might have been just outside the windows. That same soft melody, drifting and patient. Daniel couldn't stop himself. He crept to the back door again. Marcus followed reluctantly. Claire stayed behind, muttering under her breath. The night greeted them, cold and still. The sheets were there again, swaying more violently now, whipping as though in a storm. And she was there too. The woman. Not shadow this time, clearer, though her features remained blurred as though hidden behind mist. She moved slowly, pinning another torn sheet to the line, humming as she worked. Daniel's mouth went dry. His flashlight trembled in his grip. The woman paused. She turned her head. Though her face was indistinct, the intent was unmistakable. She was looking at them. The humming stopped. The sheets fell still, though no wind had changed. Then, one by one, the sheets dropped from the line. Not as if torn loose, but as if invisible hands yanked them down, sending them crumpling to the ground. The three of them bolted. They didn't speak, didn't plan. They grabbed what they could and fled the house, stumbling through the underbrush, their flashlights carving narrow tunnels through the darkness. The woods seemed endless, the trees unchanging. But none of them slowed, driven by an urgency deeper than fear. A primal certainty that if they lingered, the woman would follow. They walked until dawn. When the first gray light of morning filtered through the branches, they stumbled onto a dirt road. At its end, half hidden by weeds, their car waited like an anchor to reality. None of them looked back. They drove in silence, the thought of the house receding into the forest, swallowed again by the pines. Daniel never spoke of it in detail. Neither did Claire nor Marcus. They'd mention it in fragments, sometimes, always half-joking, like maybe if they didn't treat it seriously, it couldn't touch them again. But sometimes in the quiet moments when Daniel walked past a neighbor's laundry line or heard a faint tune hummed by a stranger, he would freeze. His throat would tighten, and for an instant he would swear the sheets were dirty, torn, and the humming was meant for him.
For our second story, we accompany a mechanic working late into the night. Alone in his shop, with nothing but the hum of lights and the weight of silence around him, he soon discovers that the late shift can bring company he never asked for.
It's funny how different the shop feels at night. During the day, there's always some kind of noise. The guys talking, the radio humming in the corner, cars pulling in and out. Even if it's quiet, you can hear traffic rolling by on the highway. But at night, after the others lock up and leave, it's just me. Me, the sound of my own tools, and that heavy kind of silence that presses in like a weight. I've gotten used to it. Extra hours mean extra pay, and I tell myself I like being alone. No distractions, no rush, just work. That night I was lying on a creeper under an old Chevy pickup, wrench in hand. I had the work light hooked under the frame, casting everything in that sharp orange glow. The transmission was giving me hell. Stubborn bolts, rusted threads, the usual kind of misery. I was focusing on one bolt when I heard something. Just a faint scuff, like the sound of a shoe dragging across the shop floor. I stopped turning the wrench, held my breath. Silence. I told myself it was nothing. The building makes noises. Roof pops when the temperature drops. Rafters shift when the wind hits the siding. Old place like this, you get used to it. I went back to work. The wrench gave a little metal squeaking against metal. And then, tap, tap, tap. 3 footsteps. Slow, steady. My hand froze on the wrench. I lay there on the creeper, staring out at the slivers of light between the tires and the floor. All I could see was the glow from my lamp stretching across the concrete. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded strange, muffled under the truck. No answer. I slid myself out from under the frame, the work light swaying with me. The shop looked exactly the same as it had when I crawled under. Empty. Tool chest against the wall. Bay doors locked up. Office door shut. Nobody there. I rubbed the back of my neck and let out a nervous laugh. Long night, I muttered to myself. I went back under. A while later I heard them again. Footsteps. Not quick. Measured. Pacing. I gripped the wrench tighter, staring out from beneath the truck. The sound grew closer, from the office side of the shop toward me. My chest tightened. The steps stopped, right next to me. And I saw it. Just the faintest suggestion of movement in the gap beneath the door of the truck. A shadow where there shouldn't have been one. "Who's there?" My voice cracked when I said it. Silence. I slid out from under the truck in one motion, wrench raised. My light swung across the floor. Empty. But that's when I noticed something strange. Smudges on the concrete right by the rear tire. Black, greasy, like footprints made from oil. I crouched and touched one with my fingertips. They came back slick and dark. Waste oil, sure, but I hadn't spilled anything. A chill crawled through me. "Get it done," I whispered to myself. "Finish and get the hell out of here." I rolled back under. My light buzzed above me. 1 turn of the wrench. 2. 3. Then the bulb flickered. I stared at the light as it dimmed to a dull orange glow. The shadows stretched long across the floor. And that's when I heard it again. The steps. Closer now, and beneath the sound of footsteps, something else. A wet, dragging breath, like someone struggling to pull air through a crushed throat. My skin went cold. I turned my head toward the faint glow, and that's when I saw them. Shoes. Black. Just standing there on the other side of the truck. I bolted, slammed my shoulder against the frame as I shoved myself out. I scrambled to my feet, wrench raised high, eyes darting. The floor was empty. The footprints were gone. I could hear my pulse in my ears. "Not funny," I said, but my voice was shaking. I backed toward the workbench, eyes flicking to the office door. That's when I heard it. A sound from inside, metal sliding, like the drawer of a file cabinet being pulled open. The office door was shut. I hadn't been in there for hours. The sound stopped. I stood frozen, staring. My instincts screamed at me to grab my keys and leave, but my tools were scattered beneath the truck, and my jacket, with my shop keys, hung by the side door. I forced myself forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. I reached the office door. My hand shook on the knob. I pushed it open. Darkness inside except for the dull glow of the clock radio on the desk. The air smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, though nobody had smoked in here for years. The file cabinet was shut, but the chair at the desk, it was turned toward the table. I hadn't left it that way. I shut the office door hard and stepped back. "I'm done," I said out loud. "Done." I grabbed my jacket, the keys jangling in my hand, and started toward the exit. Then all of a sudden, a loud bang. A crash rang out behind me, metal clattering across the floor. I spun around. My tool chest had toppled, drawers spilled open, sockets and wrenches scattered everywhere. And just beyond it, I swear I saw something. A figure standing in the shadows. Tall, hunched. Its head tilted down like it was peering at me from beneath some brim or hood I couldn't quite make out. The image burned into me for half a second, and then it was gone. The shop was empty again. I didn't wait. I yanked open the side door and stumbled into the cool night air, sucking in a breath so sharp it hurt. The quiet of the lot felt like salvation. Even the sound of cars on the highway a mile away was comforting. I got in my car and didn't look back, and I never stayed late at that shop again. But every so often, driving past at night, I see a faint glow through the cracks in the bay door, like a work light still burning and someone moving beneath the trucks.
Our final story tonight takes us high above the city streets, 14 stories up, where safety should feel certain. But for one woman, the distance only makes the impossible more terrifying. What would you do when something is watching from outside your window and there's no way it should be there?
The city had its rhythms and Amelia had grown used to them. The honking of cars far below, the dull hum of late-night traffic, the occasional siren weaving through the streets. It all became background noise in her apartment on the 14th floor. She liked the height. She liked knowing that she was above the chaos, out of reach. That was the point of moving here, after all. Distance. Distance from her ex-husband, from the smaller, darker apartment they had once shared, and from the shadows of a life that felt like it had followed her too closely. Here, high above the city, the air seemed cleaner, the sky wider. The building was modern, concrete and glass, its windows stretching from floor to ceiling. At night, she could stand at the edge of her living room and look out across the lights like she was hovering in the sky. It felt safe, but safety, as Amelia would come to learn, can be deceptive. The first time she noticed it, she thought she was imagining things. It was past midnight. She had been reading in bed, the lamp casting a weak amber glow across the bedroom. Her eyes were heavy, and when she finally put the book down, she switched off the light and rolled onto her side, facing the window. That was when she thought she saw movement, something darker than the night pressing against the glass. A figure. Just for a second. She sat up, heart thudding, and turned the lamp back on. Nothing. Only the view of the city. The glass was spotless, reflecting her own anxious face back at her. She scolded herself. The 14th floor. Nobody could reach that high. Nobody could stand there, peering in. It was the trick of light, her tired eyes making shapes where there were none. Still, she closed the curtains tightly before switching off the lamp again. The second time was different. A week had passed, and Amelia was brushing her teeth in the bathroom when she heard it. A faint dragging sound against the glass in the living room, like fingertips trailing across a window pane. She froze, the toothbrush still in her mouth, foam gathering. She strained her ears. The sound came again. A slow scrape, deliberate. Her first thought was a bird, maybe. But when she walked out into the living room, lights from the street lamps below cut into the apartment, and she saw it. For the briefest moment, a silhouette stood beyond the glass, a tall figure impossibly still watching her, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Amelia gasped and stumbled backward. The light flickered as her hand slapped against the wall for the switch. When the room lit up fully, the balcony was empty. Of course it was empty. There was no balcony to begin with. Just the smooth glass of the sealed windows and a drop straight down to the pavement 14 stories below. Her chest heaved as she stared at the spot. She told herself she had imagined it. Stress. Loneliness. It had to be. She didn't sleep that night. It began happening more frequently. At first, only at night. The faint outline of a dark figure standing beyond the glass, featureless but watching. Then in her periphery while she cooked, the black suggestion of someone just behind her, near the sliding door to the living room. Always in silence, always still. She would blink and it would vanish, but the feeling lingered, the prickling weight of eyes that were not there. One evening she awoke to the sound of tapping, sharp and deliberate, against her bedroom window. Her throat tightened. She didn't want to look, but the sound went on. Trembling, she turned her head toward the window. There it was, the figure pressed against the glass. No face, no hands she could see, just darkness where the city lights should have been. Amelia shot upright and yanked the curtain shut, retreating to the farthest corner of the room. Her phone clutched tight. She considered calling the police, but stopped herself. What could she say? That there was a man outside her 14th floor window. They would laugh, or worse, send someone to check, find nothing and label her unstable. She didn't sleep again until dawn, when the sunlight finally spilled into the apartment and the figure was gone. Days turned into weeks. Amelia grew pale and thin, sleep-deprived and jittery. Her co-workers noticed but said nothing beyond polite concern. She brushed it off, blaming stress, but the figure didn't stop. It began appearing not just at night but in broad daylight. While she drank coffee in the kitchen, she would feel it. Looking up, she would see the shadow pressed against the glass, so dark it seemed to drink in the light around it. Always at the windows, always just beyond reach. Sometimes she swore she heard breathing, a slow, measured exhale fogging the glass before vanishing. But when she approached, the pain was cold, untouched. She tried everything. She stopped opening her curtains. She slept with every light on. She even taped the newspaper over the glass, desperate to shut it out. That was when she learned something more disturbing. Even with every window covered, she still caught glimpses of it. In the hallway just beyond the corner. In the kitchen reflected in the microwave door. In the mirror behind her, tall and still, while she brushed her hair. No matter where she was, the figure found a way to watch. One night, Amelia dreamed. She was lying in bed, the city silent, her curtains fluttering though the windows were closed. She felt the weight of someone standing over her. Slowly, she opened her eyes. The figure was inside. It leaned down, its faceless head inches from hers. Though it had no features, she felt it smile. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. She awoke gasping, drenched in sweat, clutching the sheets. Her apartment was silent, empty, but the air carried the faint smell of damp earth. The following day, Amelia finally broke. She went to the building manager, insisting that something was wrong with her apartment. She didn't mention the figure, only that she heard noises at night. Scratching, tapping. She begged to be moved to another unit. The manager, a gray-haired man who had worked there for decades, regarded her carefully. He tapped his fingers on the desk before finally sighing. "You're on the 14th floor, right?" he asked quietly. She nodded. His expression darkened. "You wouldn't be the first to complain about things up there." Amelia's stomach turned cold. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then leaned closer. Before this building, there was another here. An older one, 14 stories tall. In 1972, a man jumped from the top floor, landed right about where the lobby doors are now. She stared at him. People say, he continued, lowering his voice, that he still lingers, watching, waiting, always at the windows, always looking in. Amelia left the office shaking. She wanted to demand more answers, but the look in the manager's eyes told her enough. He believed it, and he was afraid. That night, Amelia tried something different. She lit a candle and placed it by the window, whispering words she had once heard her grandmother say, a prayer for the restless dead. The flame flickered wildly, bending toward the glass, though the air was still. The figure appeared in the blink of an eye, and then, for the first time, it moved. It didn't vanish. It didn't blur into shadow. It shifted, tilting its head as if curious. Then slowly, so slowly, it raised an arm. A long dark hand pressed against the glass from the other side. The window pane shuddered. Amelia screamed and stumbled backward, the candle toppling, wax spilling hot across the floor. The light went out, plunging the room into darkness. And in that darkness she heard it. From just beyond the glass, or perhaps from within the room itself, a voice low and hollow. "Let me in." Amelia fled. She didn't pack. She didn't think. She grabbed her purse and bolted through the door, running down 14 flights of stairs until her legs gave out. She spent the night at a friend's place, trembling, unable to explain why she looked as though she'd seen death itself. She never went back to that apartment. She terminated the lease within the week, hiring movers to collect her belongings while she refused to set foot inside again. Her friend asked why she wouldn't stay, why she couldn't even sleep there one more night. Amelia only said this: windows are never as safe as you think. In the weeks that followed, new tenants moved into 14C. They laughed off the stories, dismissing them as rumors. But sometimes, late at night, neighbors would claim they saw someone standing in the windows, a tall, dark figure, waiting, watching, and always on the 14th floor.
I don't know about you, but the first story about our friends staying in the abandoned house got to me. Whether it's the idea of ghosts casually doing what they did while living, or knowing that they were surrounded by dark woods, I'll be sure to think twice the next time I go camping. What about you? What was your favorite story? Did one stay with you throughout the night? If so, please leave a comment, like, or subscribe. It really lets us know that you are out there listening and want more content. Until next time, keep the lights low and your eyes open.